And for more on this story, I'm joined by Scott Lucas, a professor of international politics at University College Dublin. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. Given what we saw happen in Damascus today and what's been happening in other parts of the Middle East, what is the likelihood that the war in Gaza will spiral into a wider conflict, do you think?
I think there's always the potential, while Israel continues the mass military operations in Gaza, that it fuels other conflicts. That could be the conflict with Hezbollah on the Lebanese border. It could be the conflict over Yemen with the Iran-backed Houthis, or as we've seen, it could be the conflict in Syria. But as your correspondent noted, this didn't start because of Gaza. This Israeli attacks on Iran have been going on for more than a decade, ever since the Iranians came in and backed the Syrian Assad regime as it killed, well, hundreds of thousands of its civilians, of its citizens. The Israelis were not attacking the Iranians to protect those Syrian civilians. They want to disrupt Iranian missile and weapon supplies to Lebanon's Hezbollah. What has shifted, however, since October 7th, since the Gaza escalation, has been that Israel has moved from attacking weapon supplies, attacking missiles, to what is in effect targeted assassinations. On December 25th, they killed the overall Iranian commander in Syria, the guy who was in charge of all Iranian forces there. What they have done today is effectively wiped out Iran's intelligence network, or at least the commanders of its intelligence network in the country.
You mentioned Hezbollah. You also mentioned the Houthis. Iran is backing the Houthis. We've seen the U.S. and the U.K. carry out strikes against them in Yemen this past week in response to the militant group's attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea. What are the chances that the U.S. could be drawn into a wider conflict?
Well, I think the Americans are playing this carefully on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, when it comes to the Red Sea, we have seen them make an effort to protect shipping by striking Houthi positions. Now, they haven't stopped the Houthi attacks, but they are hoping it will limit them. I do not think the Americans will want to get involved in a Hezbollah or Israel conflict. And indeed, they are trying to get the Israeli leadership to back off any escalation with Hezbollah. When it comes to Syria, I think the Americans have their particular area up in northeast Syria where they support the Kurdish Authority. They have their own, as it were, conflict with Iran up there. They will still have that, but they will not want to get involved directly in terms of Israel's assassinations of the Iranians or any Iranian response.
Bringing this back to the war in Gaza, U.S. President Joe Biden said this week after speaking with Benjamin Netanyahu that Netanyahu could still be open to a two-state solution. That's despite comments from Netanyahu to the contrary. So as an observer of this, is it clear to you what happens in Gaza when this war is over?
Biden's comments are fantasy land, as was Antony Blinken's visit a couple weeks ago. Benjamin Netanyahu has been opposed to a two-state solution for many, many years. He's the primary reason why there have been no serious negotiations since 2009 in the Obama administration. What the Americans are doing, however, is say, look, you can have a two-state solution. Look, Israel can have normalization with Arab states because they have handcuffed themselves over Gaza. If the United States wanted to do something about Israel and about Gaza, they could either back a ceasefire through the United Nations or they could limit military aid. Anything else right now by Biden and by Antony Blinken is just peripheral comments which don't really do anything, because as long as Benjamin Netanyahu is in office, this is an open-ended war in Gaza, and there will be no talks on any two-state solution.
Well, Netanyahu's facing growing political pressure from Washington, also from inside, from a member of his own war cabinet who is pressuring him for a ceasefire so that the hostages can be released. Why has Netanyahu so far refused to bow to any of that pressure?
I mean, let me be blunt with you and with your viewers. The moment that Benjamin Netanyahu stops the Israeli attacks in Gaza, unless Hamas is completely destroyed, in his words, he faces being thrown out of office in elections, and he faces being brought back into court to face bribery charges, charges that were effectively suspended when he tried to quash the Israeli judiciary just before the Hamas mass killings on October 7th. So Netanyahu has a personal interest as well as a broader political interest in making sure that this conflict continues.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Scott Lucas, professor of international politics at University College Dublin. Thanks so much for joining us here on France 24.
Thanks to you.